Good morning. We're learning as a schusser for Shleima Filan Chaya Basarach. We're on the Mishnah towards the bottom of Ayin Hey Amud Aleph. It's about 12 lines to the bottom. Kol Menachos Hanasas Bekli Tu'unis Psisa. All the Menachos that are made in a Kli require being broken up into pieces. The next Mishnah is going to describe the actual physical process of Psisa. Now, this Mishnah, and I'm not going to have a good answer for you on this, but this Mishnah uses the same description, Kol Menachos Hanasas Bekli, which we had used in the previous Mishnah, and that we said referred to, it was excluding Minchas Ma'afei Taner, because the Minchas Ma'afei Taner is not really Bekli. But as we're going to see in the Gemara, this is, over here it's different, it's referring to something else. The Gemara says, "Lamute mai amar papa lamute shtei alechem alechem apanim." It's coming to exclude shtei alechem alechem apanim that don't need psisa, but certainly the minchas ma'afei tana do need psisa. So the Rishonim discuss like why is it? It says because the lechem apanim and the shtei alechem require very little avoid in the kli. There's not a lot going on, so that's why it's called that they're not nasas b'kli. It's not specifically because they're baked. The pasuk says, we paraphrase and we leave out some of the intermediate words, but it means you should break it. You should break it into pieces. You should pour in the shemen mincha. It's a mincha. The rabbis call menachos l'psisa. It's coming to include all menachos that they need psisa. What about the shtei lechem and lechem apanim that are Mishnah excluded? Tamalai ma'oisa. The Torah says, psais oisa pisim. So the oisa is coming to be memayit. Oisa v'yitzak the shemen mincha. The end of the pasuk is yitzak the shemen mincha he. The rabbis call her menachos. That's coming to include all the menachos. Liyitzika. That needs the yitzika, which is the final spritzing of oil, the third year spritzing of oil. Maybe the minchas ma'afei taner also even needs yitzika, which we saw in the previous Mishnah, that the yitzika does not apply that there were only 2 times that the oil went on the minchas ma'afei taner. Aleh shemen. The pasuk says he'll talk to aleh shemen on it shemen. That excludes the mincha ma'afei taner. Oitzi is a chalas. So tomorrow oitzi is a chalas. Oitzi is a kikan. Maybe when we say that we're excluding the minchas ma'afei taner, maybe it's only excluding one of the 2 types of ma'afei taner. There's chalas and there's the rakikan. The chalas are the ones that are baked thick, and the rakikan the ones that are baked as wafers. Tamalai mehi. The Torah says he. That's an additional exclusion. So in addition to being mitzi the rakik, the chalas, it's also being mitzi the rakikin. Trying to think why the chalas are more subject to being why should we exclude those? Yeah, okay. So, let's say you're a kikin. To uni yitzika d'loyim l'chad mehani tati minin shaba. It was a Rashi, the Rashi which is real. Rabbeinu Gershom says it could really have been either one of them. So Dr. Umar, but the l'chayra, well, how do we know both of them? My Talmudah. So we have a second limud. So my Talmudah, Eimel lo haitzim minchas kayanim. Why are we saying that this pasuk that's coming to be mitzi certain menachos from yitzika? Why are we applying it to the 2 types of minchas ma'afei tana, the chalas and the rakikin? Why don't we say it's just referring to minchas kayanim? Amar Rabba ezu davar shesach shnei miyutim haviyim ezel minchas ma'afei. Because there are 2 miyutim, we fit the round peg in the round hole. So we have 2 miyutim, so we pick something that has 2 different types of minchas involved in it. So therefore we choose ma'afei taner as opposed to minchas kayanim. Sagt the Minchas Yisrael kaifel echad l'shnayim when you do this is the way you do the psisa, the procedure of psisa. Now, we're picturing matzos and rikikin as these hard, brittle matzos that you have to put in a box. I saw now that they put the thin matzos in the 2 pound box. 1 pound of thin matzos go in the 2 pound box to give you some chance of having some shleimim because they're so brittle. But these were clearly not very brittle. These were flexible types of more bread-like. So it folded into Vishnayim larba, then they would take the two and fold it into quarters. Umavdil. And they would take then they would separate it along those divisions into 4 quarters. So this is the Minchas Nadab. Minchas Kehanim, but Mincha brought by Kehanim, Kefel Echel L'Shnayim V'Shnayim La'Abba Ve'Einei Mavdil. You fold it over, but you're not Mavdil because it's not going to have a what you call it? There's no dinner. There's no requirement that it has to be separated. The psisa of folding it over is sufficient. There's not going to be a kmitz on it. The whole thing is going into the fire. Minchas Kayin Mashiach, the Minchas Chavite Kayin Gadol that he brings every day, Loi Haya Makafla. They wouldn't bend it over. The Gemara is going to say that doesn't mean you don't bend it over at all. It means you only bend it over once and not twice. That's the Tanakama. He says there's no havdalah, there's no folding over at all. Like we said, since there's no kmitza, there's no need for any kind of psisa, or even the beginning of psisa of the folding it over. And he says, a second thing that he disagrees with the Tanakam about, it's not clear that the other Rishonim who say, I was saying Rashi's Pshat, other Rishonim say that this is really going back to the Tanakama, that he also says this, but the Rashi says that they don't get, Rav Shimon says it doesn't get broken up and mavdal and left into quarters, but it gets broken down to be each piece to be a kazayas, and then you do the kmitz on it. So Tan Rabban. Psois yachal l'shnayim. It says the pasuk says psois apisim. Psois will tell you maybe just you cut it, you divide it in two, you fold it over into two. Tamalem apisim lashon rabim, you do it again. So that ipisim yachal yasena pirur. Maybe pisim means you should make it into crumbs, which is really the mashmayis. That's what we all would have thought, that you're going to do kmitz on something. It's going to be little pieces. Tamalem oisa lepsisim v'loy psisa lepsisim. That you make the original pisim, I guess from the fact that we say psois oisa pisim, you say twice that you crumble it up or you divide it up. So it can't mean that the first one means the fully that you make it into crumbs, because otherwise what would be the second pisim? So that tells you that you do it only you divide up equally each time. The first time you divide it in half, and then you take what you divide and you divide it in half again. Okay, tzad Mincha Yisrael kalevel echel l'shnayim u'shnayim la'arba u'mavdil Minchas Kainim u'kayim Mashiach hayim mekafelos, like we said. V'har frek demar v'anantel and layim mekafla. Why are we saying the Minchas Kainim u'kayim Mashiach hayim mekafla? In our Mishnah, we didn't say that the Minchas Kainim Mashiach gets folded over. We said only the Minchas Kainim has kvela, but the Minchas Kainim Mashiach, the Chavite Kainim Gadol, were not folded over. I'm sorry, we said, right. So even the minchas, we said that you're not mavdil, you don't separate the minchas kayin, the minchas kayin chavit, and even though we said you don't fold it over, it doesn't mean that you don't fold it over at all, but it means you fold it over one time, but you don't fold it over a second time. And you're certainly not mavdil it, just like a kayin. Shimon said there's no psisa on the Minchas Kayin and Minchas Kayin Mashiach because they don't have kaimitz. Hi chavitza. This chavitza, let's see the taich of the Rashi and the Ksav Yad. Chavitza tafshil shekayin shalnokis shemafarim bapas. It's a kind of cooked food that you spread in it It has like croutons in it. It has pieces of bread as part of it's like a bread kugel. You make a whole kugel and you put pieces of bread in it. The isba pirurin, kazayas, if it has pieces of bread spread out inside this cooked dish that are kazayas, you make an hamaitzi, you make a hamaitzi on those pieces. Iles ba pirurin, kazayas, but if none of the pieces are the size of a kazayas, you make a mezainis. Again, this is just because it's in a cooked thing. We're not saying that a general rule that if you have a piece of bread that's less than a kazayas, you make a mezainis. Certainly that's not the case. But what it's saying is that if you have, in the cooked version, if you have pieces that are a full kazayas, you make hamaitzi, less than a kazayas, you make mezainis. Amr of Yosef, Amin Allah. Where do I know this from? The Tanya. The menachos, as we know, were cooked. They were like griddled or baked, or they were in some form. They were cooked with oil and water. So you're standing and being makav. Someone who's being makav menachos Yerushalayim could either be referring to the Rashi brings different shatim. It could be referring to the kohen when he brings it for the first time. Or Yid Yisrael who brings his mincha and gives it over to the kohen. I'm a brach shechiyanu v'kimanu. He makes a bracha shechiyanu the first time a kohen brings the mincha by his mishmar, or the Yisrael when he donates it. Nachlon la'atlan, when the kohen takes it afterwards, the only one who eats a mincha is the kohen. When he takes his shirayim to eat, I'm a hamaitzi lechem and aretz. He makes a hamaitzi. And we said in our Mishnah, even according to Rav Shimon, so this is where that machlekes that we saw in the Rishonim about how to understand the Mishnah, but it doesn't really make a difference. Even talking about Rav Shimon says it has to be, you have to break it up into pieces of kazayis. The Tanna Kama says you break it up into pieces that are much larger than the kazayis. You only make it into quarters. The Isaron had many kazaysim in it. So in either case, we see that these pieces that are kazayas, you make a hamaitzi on them. What about according to the Tanda B'Yishmael, the Amar? He says psisa is more not like either of the Tanas of our Mishnah. He says more like we had all imagined, that you crumble it into little crumbs. I don't know, that's the way it was always touched to me when we learned it in Chumash. So you make it into crumbs. He says you get it back into like our matzah meal that we eat. Some of us eat on Pesach. So you take the baked matzah and then you crumble it. Would you taka say that you don't make a bracha of hamaitzi? And if you'll say it's taka the case. Now this brisa, it's hard to understand the structure over here, because what you would expect now is to see a raya that according to Rabbi Yishmael, you also have to make a hamaitzi on your mincha. That's not what's coming up. This brisa is just going to be really an independent raya that any piece that's of lechem that's a kazayis independently needs hamaitzi. So it's really a raya to the svara behind this that you'll make a bracha. You make a bracha even on less than this, even on a piece that's smaller than a kazayis. Vatanya with the raya liket mikulan kazayis. Rashi says if you took from a bunch of different minei dagan, from all 5 minei dagan, and you put them together, each one is a fifth of a kazayis. Put them together, you got from all them one kazayis. Va'achlu, and he ate it on Pesach. Im chametzu anish karas. If it's chametz, he's chayiv karas. Even though he had like a cookie made with, he wasn't really a cookie. It was 5 pieces of cookie. One was an oat cookie, a fifth of a kazayis, and one was a wheat cookie, and a barley, and a spelt, and a oat, and what was the last one? Rye. So you'll be chayiv karas for eating chametz. And matzahu, and if you baked it into a matzah, adam yetzben yidei chuvas pesach. So you see that these pieces, even though they're less than a kazayis, they have a chashivas of lechem, and therefore they should also require a bracha. It's very strange. A raya is like talking about something else, and we're bringing a raya. We're saying based on a svara that it should be the same. There's really two problems. One is what did Rabbi Shmuel add? What did it add by saying Rabbi Shmuel, and then say it must be that Rabbi Shmuel holds like this because we have this other raya, and then this raya is really that we're just saying something else has a din lechem, and therefore it's a sort of it requires a certain amount of extrapolation to get to the raya. So the Gemara answers no. Over there, it's not really pieces that are less than a kazai. So we're talking about where you took all these 5 pieces and you smushed them together to make it into one cookie. If that's the case, it doesn't make sense that which the Brisa continues and says that you're going to be yotzi yedei chavasa with matzah and yemichayev chametz if you ate it, if you achlon b'chdei achilas pras, if you ate them b'chdei achilas pras. And if you're talking about where you put them together, sha'achlu, he should have said that he ate it. He boiled it. The Gemara answers no. There's a different distinction. We're talking about where they had originally been part of a larger piece. It's not that they all were part of originally one. What I thought when I read it was that it's talking about where it all came originally from one piece and then you divided it up. But it's not what it says. It says B'Bava Lechem Gadol on the Rashi Ksav Yad Pirurim Psisas Mikzayis Shepasam Lechem Gadol Min Chashuvas Agav Aviyim. If you take each one of these small pieces of lesser kazayas from something that's more than a kazayas, that gives it a chashivas. And it doesn't it sounds like it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they added up together to kazayas. It sounds like that these pieces have chashivas because they came from a kazayas, which means I guess you could have just taken one of them. But maybe it's talking about you need both factors, and even though Rashi doesn't say that, it has to both have come from a larger kazayas, from a kazayas, and now it was added together with other things, so you're actually eating a kazayas. My havi Allah. So what's taka the din on Rabbi Yosef's originally a question on the chavitza. Rav Sheshes Amar Afila Pirun Sheiben Kazayas, that it's going to be chayiv even Pirun that don't have a kazayas. You're going to have to make a bracha. Amarav Avudika Teresa Denama Alayu. That's only if these pieces of bread cooked into the food still have the appearance of bread. Once they dissolve and they've just become an ingredient, they no longer get an hamaitzi. Zok the Mishnah. Kalat Menachos Tunis Shalish Meyas Shifa v'chomish meis beita. All of the menachos, part of the process is it needs 300 shifas, where Rashi says he rubs it in his hands. The regular Rashi shemeshafshef b'yadei she'mayluchum maybe b'pieces yadei alei. He rubs it between his hands, and it needs chomish meis beita are hits. Rashi says that it's talking about the grains, that you bang on the grains in order to get rid of all these things, or to get rid of all the husks and the extra things that we don't want. Yeah. Dr. Gemara, Dr. Mishnah, I'm sorry. Shifa u'be'ita, b'chamash meis be'ita, Shifa u'be'ita b'chitin. This is so that's the way Rashi had explained it. It's talking about the what you do to the wheat to get rid of the chaff. Yossi says it's not talking about. He agrees that there is such a concept, but he applies it to the dough. It's a way of kneading the dough. Kol menachos boys eser. All the minchas are brought as 10 loaves of bread. You divide it up into 10 loaves. The saran gets divided into 10 loaves. Chutz mi lechem aponim v'chavite kohen gadol. Lechem aponim As we all know, we saw the pictures of the Shulchan. There are 12. The Torah says there are 12. Chavita Kohen Gadol Shem Boy Shtayim Esrei. The Chavita Kohen Gadol as well come 12. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Meir Aima Kulam Boy Shtayim Esrei. He says Adarabba. Everything is bought 12. Chutz Michalis Toido Nazir Shem Boy Eser Eser. He says generally Menachos are like the Lechem Aponim. That it comes 12. The only exceptions are Lachme Chalis of Toida and the Nazirs. That those go 10. Zaktimar Tana Shav Achas Boyit Shtayim Shav Shtayim Uboyit Shalosh. The procedure was you didn't do like 300 rubs and then 500 hits. Rather you do one time rubbing it, then hit it twice, then you rub it twice, and you hit it 3 times. So that comes out to 3 rubbings and 5 hits, and that if you do it 100 times, that will be 300 and 500. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, am tuye v'asuye chad? Is each time you roll the rubbing is you take, like Rashi said, you take the thing and you rub it between your hands. Is each time you go back and forth, is that one? Is each time you go back and forth, it's counted as 2. My take l'chayra, it's a problem. I would ask Taina. It's almost impossible to do it. Like it's not natural to do just one. You always do 2. And we said, right? The Gemara just said that you have to do a she'ifa. You have to do 1 she'ifa. So you say it always equals 2. How do you ever have 1 she'ifa? It seems the OCD people have a very hard time. You tell them just to do a rub and not to go back. That's my editorial comment. Shifu be'ita b'chitin. We learned that it's a machlokes about whether these rubbings and bangings were done on the raw wheat or were they done after it was made into dough. Ibailu. But batzik v'loy b'chitin oidil ma'af v'batzik. When we said in the Mishnah, does that mean he's saying in addition to doing it on the chitin, you also do it on the batzik? Because we basically said the batzik, maybe that just means you add that on. Tashma the Tanya. Shifu be'ita b'chitin. It says shifu be'ita b'chitin, right? Which is like the Tanakam. Shifu be'ita b'batzik. So over here he said it more specifically. So from the fact that he said the whole phrase, it sounds more like he's totally arguing on the Tanakama. The Tanakama says it's on the chitin. He says it's on the batzik and not. But our Mishnah is more open to interpretation. So that's why the Bryce is a raya that he's being chaylik, and he says you don't do it on the chitin. Kol ha-menachos boyis, we said the Tanakama said that all menachos come as 10. They divide into 10 loaves, except for the lechem, the shtei ha-lechem, the lechem aponim, and the chavite kohen gadol. And Remeir says everything comes 12 except for the chalos toidos and nazirs. Zaktimar lechem aponim behedjik sibei lechem aponim. The Torah says directly that it's 12. Chavite kohen gadol. Where do we know the chavite kohen gadol? They are 12. Asher chuka melechem aponim. We learn it from Gzeir Shabbat. Kol manachos have the boy is eser minol. And where does the Tanakama know that everything comes as 10? Gam milachmei toida. We learn it from lachmei toida. The Torah says about the lachmei toida that it comes in 4 groups of 10. So we learn out all menachos from the toida. Malol and eser afkan eser. The leila melechem aponim. Why do we learn it out from the lachmei toida? Why do we compare it to the lechem aponim, which is 12? Malol and shtei mesrei afkan shtei mesrei. Zaknora mishtav milachmei toida havleila melech stam menachos. Other menachos are more likely to be learned out from the toida than from the lechem aponim, shechein yachid, the lachmei toida brought by an individual, as are most menachos. Hamisnadev shemen, hamisnadev, it's a yachid that's giving it as a nedava. Shemen, it has shemen. The lechem aponim does not have shemen. Nifsal, what is nifsal? What is nifsal? It's a long list.
Rashi says v'tavayu nifsal spelina.
Yeah, right. Oh, because pasul lino. Very good. As opposed to lechem aponim that goes for a whole week. You put it out there and it doesn't become possible. The problem with Rashi over here is The tiny Rashi, I really can't see them, and I don't even remember which Rashi to look at. Shaloi b'Shabbos, and it's not brought on Shabbos. Masha Enkein, the Lechem Mishnah, as we all know, is brought on Shabbos, like we do. Shaloi b'Tumah, Lechem upon him is deicha Tumah, it's deicha Tumah. Zaktamara Adarab Lechem upon him Lechem upon him also has similarities to the Lechem, to the Mincha Nedava. Shechein Hektish, it's Kodesh Kadoshim, Ulevina, Lachmei Taida are not Kodesh Kadoshim. Taida is a Kachay Kalim. Ulevina has Levina, Lachmei Taida don't have Matzah. It's whereas a Matzah, and the Taida has in it Chametz. One of the four types is Chametz. The Etzem, and it's brought on its own, and Lachmei Taida brought together with the Shlamim of the Taida. So tomorrow, in the end, Hanach Nefishin. Although you have a couple of reasons why it should be compared to the Lechem upon him, there's more reasons to compare it to the Taida. We had said that there were two things. Besides the Taida that is done with 10, there's also the Chavite Kayin Gadol, which is done with 10, because we learned it out as Gzeir Shava from Lachmei Taida. So if you say that something there's a man who says you can learn something that was learned in Gzeir Shava, you go and learn it out to Binyan to compare it to other things. Why don't we compare other Menachos to Chavite Kayin Gadol? Malon Shtei Mesrei Avkan Shtei Mesrei. So come on, Mistav Milachmei Taida Havel Lamelech. More likely to learn out from Lachmei Taida. Shechein Hedyet. It's Chavitim is not a Hedyet, it's the Kayin Gadol. And the Taida, as well as Stam Menachos, are for a Hedyet. Shes Nadev, and it was given as a Nedava, it was not a Chayva. And the Chavite Kayin Gadol must be brought every day. Chatzoyin, the Chavite Kayin Gadol are divided in half, and the Taida and the Mincha is not divided in half. Lepigel, and they also the Chavite Kayin Gadol, since they don't have any portion that's a kaimitz, they don't have, it's not a davar sheyesh lo matirin, they're not subject to pigel. But the Taida, the Mincha, the kaimitz is the matir, so it's subject to pigel. Shaloi b'Shabbos, it's not on Shabbos. So Lachmei Taida is not brought on Shabbos, and the Mincha is not brought on Shabbos. Chavitim is brought on Shabbos. For Shaloi b'Tumah, Chavitim is brought on Tumah. So the Adarab, Chavite Kayin Gadol have Shechein Isarin. It's an Isarin, and the Taida is more than an Isarin. Kli, it's done in a Kli, and the Lechem Hapanim is not in a Kli. Are we talking about the Lechem Hapanim? What are we talking about? Talking about the Taida.
Taida.
We're comparing. We're saying let's compare Menachos to Chavite Kayin Gadol as opposed to the Taida. So it should include so which things are? If I have a Kli, the Menachos and Chavitim are brought in a Kli. The Taida, the Chayr is not brought in a Kli. What does that mean? Let's see the Rashi.
Peter says a Zavach Mekacham.
You're looking in the regular Rashi?
Yeah.
Okay, so right. It's not Mekudesh in the Kli, but rather there's We had the Gemara before that it becomes Mekudesh, even though we said that it becomes Hukva to be. We ended off saying that it's not really that it becomes Mekudesh by the bringing of the carbon. It's more, but I guess in some sense it has that it's Mekudesh through the carbon. Hektish, again, that it's Kodesh Kadoshim. Taida is not. Levina, which is the same as before. Levina, they have Levina, and the Taida doesn't. Matzah, and the Taida has in it Chametz. For Etzem, and the Taida is brought for something else. It's not brought on its own. It's brought together with other things. Um, Hagasha, they have it in Hagasha, which the Taida does not. The Ishim and is burnt while the Taida is eaten. It's not fully burnt. The honey nefishin. And the chayre over here, we have a good time. You can't come back and say it's nafish because the chavitim is more than the taida. So but in the end, the fact trying to say you learn out menachos from chavite kohen gadol just sounds like it's a very different thing. It's talking about something that's brought by the kohen gadol. It doesn't have much relevance to menachos. So a taida to mincha is both in the same class. So we'd rather learn from the taida. Then we've had the end of our Mishnah. He holds everything is 12, except for the Chalas Taida, which we just saw, with the pasuk says, and the Ziris that go as 12. So tomorrow, Meir Mekulam Boy Shtayim Esrei Microsoft or Israel Lady Davar Laman Begzer Shava Chayzom Lam Bebinyanav Yal Mechavite de Kohen Gadol the Hani Nefishin. Why don't we learn out from the Chavite Kohen Gadol that are 10? That everything should be 10. Why is he saying that the minchas are coming as 12? Yisrael davar lam b'gzer shava ein chayzim lam b'binyanav yad melecha b'panim. So Gemara hekdesh mehekdesh adiflei. He holds that it's better to learn out hekdesh from hekdesh. So he says everything is learned from the lechem hapanim. He doesn't agree with the svara that we said at the end, that better to learn from not from the lechem hapanim, chavitim. He doesn't agree with the svara that chavitim are different, so therefore we shouldn't learn out from him. He says he can do it from chavitim. So he holds that davar alam behekesh is chayzim alamed, and he doesn't agree. Oh, sorry, what is this saying? No. I think I somehow skipped this when I was learning it before. This let's learn out chavite kohen gadol that are 10. That's the difference should also be 10. Let's learn out from the lechem hapanim. So basically, why doesn't he agree to the svara of the Tanakama? So Gemara hekdesh adiflei. He says it's better to learn out from the Taida. The Taida is not hekdesh. So what is he saying? Hekdesh mehekdesh adiflei. So what is he learning it out from? It's not from the lechem hapanim. Lechem hapanim is hekdesh. Taida is not hekdesh. So l'chayra he says davar alam b'gzer shava is ein chayzim lam b'hekdesh. And as far as learning from the Taida, he says it's not hekdesh, so we don't learn it out. Okay. This sometimes happens. Sometimes you're learning something, and it looks very similar. And then when you go back to it, you don't realize you hadn't seen it. So somehow I missed that. Zaktimar. Chutz milach mitoidu zir shehim bois eser eser. Reveya says everything is 12. We learn it out from the lechem hapanim, except for lach mitoidu and naziris that go at 12. Everything's 10. You learn out from Taida, except for lach mitoidu and naziris that they come 12. This is still the Tanakama, right? Is that right?
No.
Kol mechz bois eser chutz min lechem hapanim chavit kohen sheim bois shtei mesrei. The Rebbe Meir Kulum bois shtei mesrei. Yeah, so it's still in the Tanakama that everything goes 10.
We're in Remeir now. Remeir said Kulum bois shtei mesrei chutz michalas Taida v'naziris.
The Kulum bois shtei mesrei.
Chutz michalas Taida
v'naziris. Right. I'm sorry. We're in Remeir. Everything is 12 except for these things that are 10. Lach metoida behed yiksibuhu. Lach metoida we know is 10. The Torah says 10. Four things of 10. Naziris, the Amar Mar, Shlom of the Rabbi Shalmi Nazir. It says Shlom by the Torah, that's coming to be Mar, but something else we say it's coming to include the Shalmi Nazir. That they also, the bread that accompanies it goes as 10. L'chayr, the svara is that this is the other case where you have loaves that come along together with the carbon. So it's similar to the taida that is loaves that come along with the carbon. Amr of Tui by Kisna Amr Shmuel, Lachmei Toiva she'afan arba chalas yotz. If Lachmei Toiva, which are supposed to be 40, if you consolidated it and you only did 4, it's still yotz. If Abayin and Arboim, either Torah says you need 40, la mitzvah, that's only a mitzvah, but the average creates it with 4. In fact, the Marva Aboye Frushe Truma Minayu, in addition to divide, when you make the 40, one out of each 10 has to be given to a kohen. And how could you do that if it's only one? If you'll say you break off a piece of each large one, the Torah says, Echad, you say you give him one. That tells you can't give the kohen a piece. You have to give him a whole loaf. And for the Gemara, afreshinu belisha. You can give the kohen his piece before it was baked. I'm not sure exactly how this works. I haven't worked it out. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what the requirements were, but l'chari you need the kmitza. All these things happen after it was made into a dough. So how can you separate? I guess the taida there's no kmitza. It all goes to the bailam. So it doesn't have a kmitza, so therefore there's no problem with taking off a piece of dough. There's no further avoid to be done with it after that point. You just bake it. Meitzvei. Kol ha-menacha sheriba b'midas chalasan, or shemiyah b'midas chalasan. Ksheris. Any time you made more, you subdivided into more chalas, or you made less chalas, it's still kosher. Chutz milechem apanim, except lechem apanim that the Torah says you need 12 of them. V'chavitei kohen gadol, that they need 12. Lachmei toida unazirus. Lachmei toida that we just learned out that they need 10. All these things are ma'akev. So Zakdamara al-Chayra, this is not like we just said. We said you could, on the Taida, you could just do one. So Mahudamei Kaitan and Taji, Kol Melech Shariu B'midas, Chalasan, Shemiyah B'midas Chalasan, Ksheris, Chutz Melechem Panim, V'chavite Kain Gadol. Doesn't say the Taida. So therefore, it's not this Man Omer, this Tanakama argues on the Tana that we just brought. There are those who say Aflach Metoid Naziris, which is the brisa that we brought that's chaylik on this concept. Amar Huna, Mincha Ma'afe Tanur She'af Chala Achas. You made it into one large chala yotza. Even though we said it has to really be 10 or 12 according to different mandam in our Mishnah. My timer matzah ksiv, because it says matzahs without a vav. So that tells you it's mechoser. So it tells you it could even be one. It doesn't require. It's not required that it be divided up into separate chalas. Maskler Papa time ksiv matzah. So ksiv matzahs with a vav. Loiv agabi lachmei toidich ksiv matzahs. Lachmei toidich it says matzahs. And Vamar of Tuvi Bakisna Amar Shmuel Lachmei toidich avan arba chalas yatsa. We just said that the lachmei toidich, he said you could even be yaitza b'diavad. If you make the 10 into 1, it's good. You say whatever. It depends on whether it has the vav. If it has the vav, that means it's it's ma'akev. So Gemara ahi pliga. That's a machlokes. He's chaylik on Rav Huna. I don't understand this really because L'chai was saying that the lack of a matzah is a reason to say that is not that's a lima to tell you that it can even be yaitza with less, but it doesn't mean we have a different reason for saying by the Taida that it's I guess we didn't really say the reason by the Taida why you do arba chalas it's yaitza. Okay, I'm going to stop over here, and tomorrow Bez Hashem will finish the parak.